Hey, small groups, I hope you're having a great week. Today we are continuing our small group sessions on New Year's Revolution. Today, looking at specifically the worship revolution. I think we all need a revolution in our worship. We need that fresh sense of passion and love and desire for God's presence. And so on Sunday, I spoke about how we are to recover some of that, but also spoke about this idea of David modeling a revolutionary posture of worship long before his time. Check this out. Okay, so forgive me, I'm not a good artist whatsoever, but I want to try. So work with me. This is a timeline of all of creation, okay? Here's the beginning where God spoke everything into being, and I'll draw Adam and Eve here, little cute people, at the very dawn of creation. Adam and Eve, give them an A and an E. And then right over the other side of the timeline, I'll draw you and me. That arrow speaks to the return of Christ, but here we are. This is you and me. And obviously, our existence and our reality of God is very different to Adam and Eve. And that's because what splits us is the cross of Christ. The cross comes in human time and space about 2,000 years ago. And this divides time into Old Testament or Old Covenant, BC, if you like, and then New Testament, New Covenant, which we refer to as AD. And ultimately, the Old Covenant speaks to the old way, the New Covenant speaks to the new way. So in this Old Testament period, we have a boat, which speaks to Noah's existence. We have Abraham, and I'll give him a little son, Isaac, founding father of the Jews. We have Moses. I'll give him a staff and also a tablet, not an iPad. That's tablet of stone. That's the commandments. And Moses, as instructed by God, establishes the tabernacle. The tabernacle was a place where the people of God would worship God, but not like we worship God. They would have to bring a sacrifice. They would have to bring like an animal without blemish. They would bring that sacrifice. The high priest would slaughter the sacrifice, and they would find temporary atonement for their sin. Then they'd sin again. They need another sacrifice, more atonement. And this practice continues. And it's driven by obligation. It's driven by duty. And it's driven by ritual. It really is the undergirding of the law. But ultimately, these things without heart lead to religion. So it was a religious existence before the cross. Now, all these things point to Jesus. The sacrifice pointed to Jesus. The high priest pointed to Jesus. But ultimately, what it did is it locked people into a almost a cold existence with God because it was driven by duty and not by free will and passion, if you like. Then I've just blotted those out because I want to talk about David just for a minute. Here's David, okay, with his hands raised. I'll give him a little crown as well because obviously he was the king of Israel. And David was crazy exceptional in his time because obviously he existed in the Old Testament before Jesus. Yet he worshipped God out of choice, out of love, and out of passion. Now, obviously, whilst everyone else was going to the temple to make atonement for their sins, David was like worshipping. And so David knew a different freedom to everyone else in his time. Whilst everyone was locked into religion, he was kind of locked on freedom. And so David almost, if you like, this is what the arrow speaks to, worships as one like who came after the cross rather than one before. Yet, make no mistake about it, David was still under the law because Jesus hadn't come. Yet his worship was so revolutionary that it was like motivated by passion rather than duty. David was a revolutionary worshipper. I hope you're blown away by that expression of creativity and that it really blessed you. I just draw because, for the love of art. I don't do it for the money, or I should say, I don't do it for the money. Moving swiftly on. Anyways, enjoy tonight's small group. We're going to be looking at ways that we can recover or renew that heart of worship that David expresses long before his time. It's funny, isn't it? That David found a freedom in his worship before Jesus. And so often, we come after the cross and we fall into religious mindsets and religious practices of worship. David worshipped God because he got to worship God. Sometimes our expression of worship, going to church or whatever, is because we have to. And so, really, I want us to go after that tonight is how do we allow the new heart that God has put in us really em- embrace that sense of passion for God, love for God, fire for God that so often we misplace in our Christian walk? And how can we keep it? How can we encourage one another? And how on Sunday, when we come together corporately, can we just see worship rise to the next level? There's great days ahead for us at Sunny Hill, but it all starts in worship. It starts in submission and an understanding that God, this is all for you. It's all about you. Be glorified. And so tonight, I really want us to get into that conversation. How do we cultivate a revolutionary heart of worship? Have a great evening together. Be blessed.